The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, thank you for joining today's webinar sponsored by Index Engines. Today's topic is how to use data profiling and data classification to define policy. My name is Jim McGann. I'm Vice President of Marketing here at Index Engines. I am joined today by Greg Jorgensen, who's a solutions architect, and he will do a demonstration of the technology for you today. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat area that's on the lower right portion of your screen, and we'll try to address them during the session. Otherwise, my email address is up there. I'll put it up at the end of the session as well, and you can ask a one-on-one question or ask for a copy of the slide deck or the recording as well. Today's session will be recorded for your access in the future. Okay, let's get started. For those of you that are not familiar with Index Engines, we are an enterprise information management and archiving organization. We provide software that helps provide intelligence across all data sources, from legacy environments like backup tapes to current environments like desktops and servers. We allow organizations to really find, profile, manage their assets. So, excuse me, to be able to support their policies, their information governance, e-discovery strategies, anything that involves the access and knowledge of what exists on your networks. And data profiling is the topic of today, which is kind of an interesting view. It's a very high-level summary view, and we provide typically knowledge that customers haven't had in the past of their content. And one of the important features in order to be able to do that is that it's architected to be incredibly scalable and very high performance, so it can plug into your data center environment and provide you the knowledge you need in order to make decisions. The challenge that you're facing, and really I'm speaking to the choir here, you guys deal with this every day, is that it's a very complex environment you're dealing with. And any records management, information governance, or archiving strategies really have to focus on the massive volumes of data that exist across the enterprise, networks and servers and so on. And then the content that's locked away in proprietary repositories like email, even legacy backups. So the complexity of the environment has always really been a stumbling block for our clients that really don't even know where to begin. Organizations and every company is pretty similar here, is they save everything. I mean, some of the companies have policies to purge content, but all in all, a lot of stuff is saved. And IT organizations are constantly replicating and copying and hoarding away information. Users are constantly copying data as well. And most stuff is really not purged. I mean, organizations really haven't felt the need to delete or purge content that's outlived its business usefulness, or even try to figure out what's outlived its business usefulness. They've just kept everything. Another constant challenge that we hear in the field is that users have power. So how many of your organizations allow users to create PST files for email, or to store data on network user shares? It's really that kind of situation causes challenges down the road when managing and trying to support information governance policies and so on. And then the general lack of knowledge, that's really the biggest issue, is our organizations are constantly coming to us saying, I'm being asked to create an archiving strategy and I have no idea what exists. Or I'm being asked to upgrade servers and add more capacity, and I know a bunch of that stuff is useless, but I really don't know what is useless. So there's no real master catalog or master directory of that content. So here's some good old statistics. It wouldn't be a slide presentation without statistics. From our friends at Gartner Group, spend their lives analyzing this environment, showing that data growth rates are anywhere from 40 to 60% year on year. And we hear numbers that are even beyond that. Some of the stats are the amount of data that's created in the past year or so equals what's been created since the beginning of time. So there's phenomenal growth rate that's going on. I don't think anybody questions that. One of the challenges that, since really your responsibility is managing data, you work closely with the IT organizations or may even sit within the IT organizations, that, another stat from our friends at Gartner are showing that, by through 2013, the business case for 95% of information management programs will depend on reducing IT costs and managing risk. So, the goal of, the challenge of information management is, as we talked earlier, is overwhelming. So to be able to tackle that on reduced IT budgets is very challenging. So I think, the struggles that you're facing every day is, data is growing exponentially, IT budgets being cut, and, I don't know if everybody's familiar with the CGOC, which is the, Compliance, Governance, and Oversight Council, but they're stating, and this has, been endorsed by IBM, is that approximately 69%, which is a huge number of information in most companies, has no business, legal, or regulatory value. So with your budgets being cut, with you struggling to manage data, with data growing at exponential rates, if 40% or 50% or 60 or 70% has no business value, what happens if we clean that stuff up first, find that, classify it, purge it out of the network, and then start organizing the rest of the stuff? So data profiling really focuses on that. I think, cleaning up content is one angle, but just gaining knowledge, so, don't worry that you're going to have to hit a delete button. Just say, let me know what's there. And we have a lot of customers today that have implemented this, and they're not really making disposition decisions today. What they're doing is using the knowledge and the insight that data profiling provides to be able to go to the different business units and negotiate with them what they should keep, what they shouldn't keep, what needs to be archived, what could be tiered out to offline storage environments, and so on. So data profiling is the ability to just as it says, profile data, and profiling in high-level summary reports and queries and filters and so on that give you a view into the content. So the first step is really kind of scanning your data sources, and most of our customers, or what they're doing is looking through their environment and picking out certain areas like user shares, departmental servers, like maybe your HR department or legal department, maybe it's email, maybe it's even legacy content on tapes. Picking out where their highest pain points are and targeting that. And I think, for any information governance or records management strategy is, the challenge is just getting started. So if you pick a small environment or pick a very targeted environment, you can get going. The idea is you don't want to try to, boil the ocean and try to accomplish too much because you'll never get anything done. If you pick your battles, pick your pain points, and go after it, you can really start the process. And the focus here is to create a very rich metadata level index. And most of the customers that we're talking to are generating metadata level, and that's good enough for them. We do have an option, which I'll talk about later, to go deeper and do full content, but traditional data profiling is really about metadata, which is going to give you that high-level view, which is good enough for what you need. And so what happens when you point to those sources, you're going to create, you can extract this metadata information into a searchable and reportable database that allow you to really get views and get insight into the content. So some of the metadata fields are dates, which is obviously very important. And it's not only last modified date, but last access date, or when it was created. Access date is a really key trigger. So if you can say, of those 10 terabytes of content, what hasn't been accessed in more than 3 years? So that's going to allow you to tell you that stuff is really kind of out there in the wild and no one knows it exists. It may have value, or it may not have value, and it's kind of just basically self-filtered and self-out, that no one really needs it any longer. Users, obviously, who is the author, who owns the documents, location and size of the document. Size is critical. So if you're kind of looking for, people that are kind of data hogs, those people that download everything and store everything on their desktops or servers, including their iTunes libraries and copies of movies, who are the biggest, culprits out there in terms of, capacity hogs, and what are they storing? And even backup information as well. So what you're doing is really extracting this content into a searchable repository, and then you can use the interface, which Greg will show you in the demo, to combine queries and filters and summary reports in order to make decisions about the data. And here I think the nice thing about data profiling, if say you go in there and you point it to 10 terabytes of data, it'll allow you to provide this level of insight into what's there. You get a good idea of how it works and can get started in order to make disposition decisions about the system. So, I think the key is to start leveraging this metadata in order to really understand what exists out there. And we work with customers all the time to help develop these levels of policies. So, every company is going to differ here, but you can develop policy around abandoned data. So abandoned data is, say, some content that's owned by X employees. And one of the really important points with the Index Engines platform is we integrate into Active Directory. So Active Directory knows who's active employees and who's inactive employees. So by doing that, we can say, show me all inactive employees, so those are your ex-employees, data that has not been accessed in years. So let's say 3 years, for example. So if we classify that as abandoned, and you go out to those business units and say, hey, HR or finance, 60% of what you're storing on the network is abandoned data. It's ex-employee content that has had no access. Obviously, you need to do a scan against that for any kind of legal hold purposes or regulatory hold purposes. But all in all, that can be classified as abandoned content. Age content, very similar, but that's really kind of your current employees that has not been accessed in, say, more than 3 years. So is it age because no one needs it and it doesn't have any value? Is it age because no one knows that it's there? Should you try to mine it and see if it has business value, or should you try to just get rid of it altogether because no one really needs access to that content? Redundant content, even though we're creating a metadata-only level index, it uses a full MD5 hash algorithm to determine if it's duplicate or not. So duplicate content, obviously, if it's duplicate content owned by ex-employees, pretty safe to get rid of that stuff, and that could add up. But we've seen customers that have anywhere from 30 to 40% of redundant or duplicate data on network servers. Personal data is another policy that we see customers create. So a lot of organizations want to find, personal stuff like iTunes, movies, photos. Say one of your employees comes back from vacation and loads their vacation photos on their network drive to share with other employees and send it out to a bunch of people, and they save it on their desktop. So finding that stuff, finding iTunes libraries, searching the metadata paths for iTunes and movies, if they download the entire Star Wars, series of movies on their desktop, you want to know that. Risk-based data, that's your e-discovery stuff, your legal hold stuff, your stuff like PI, which is personally identifiable information that needs to be on legal hold. So where is that stuff? Archive-based data, that's your content with long-term business value. We're focused on value-based archives versus archiving everything. So, this will allow you to find that content. And then the active data, the stuff that you want to remain in place. This is more of the current stuff that users created recently. You want to remain it and manage it in place. So if some certain trigger event happens, maybe the owner becomes an ex-employee, or it ages out to a certain age that suddenly it, has become, aged content, or it contains certain keywords or whatever that trigger, legal hold events against it. You can take action on it. So these policies, and your policies may differ, allow you to use data profiling to have communication with the folks that be and say, hey, did you know that, and you can put your percentages there, that 22% of your stock data is abandoned, 18% of it is aged, 40% is redundant, and so on. So in terms of our product, it's branded as the Octane platform, the data profiling engine, and it is a very high-speed product that plugs into your data center. It's really a server And we have a couple of different ways to deploy it. You can deploy it as hardware. We're also launching shortly a VMware version, which is a virtual environment that can plug into your data center, very high-speed indexing, very non-evasive, does incremental updates, and it sits there and monitors your data, understands what you have, creates its metadata index that you can report and search on, can connect to any network sources, even desktops, as well as legacy backup dates. So you can do data profiling on legacy environments as well. Very cost effective. I'll talk about pricing at the end. Allows you to get started. And every customer that we've installed this in, it never fails, is the first thing they do is start looking at their data and say, wow, I mean, I never knew that. We had a customer that put this in the first 5 minutes. They did a report, and they found that the top 3 users by capacity of data on their networks were all ex-employees, and they no longer work there. And that was an insight to them that they could use to go and help manage data more effectively. So in terms of the metadata output, and Greg will show you this in the demo, here's a listing of some of the metadata fields, from user file information to email information, and so on. So you can use data profiling to do queries and reports to say, tell me what hasn't been accessed in more than 7 years, or 5 years, or 3 years, or 2 years. Tell me what data is owned by ex-employees. That's a popular one. So you'd be surprised what's floating around your network that's owned by ex-employees. In most organizations, when someone leaves the company, they refresh their laptop or desktop, but the stuff that they own that's out on the network just sits there and becomes abandoned. Where is John Doe's email? So if John Doe's storing PSTs all across the network, where are they? If you do a deep data profile and do full content, you can go deep into those mailboxes and emails. If you do a light one, a high-level just metadata, you're just going to be able to find things like PSTs, just the containers. For the IT guys, why am I archiving data on the tape that's more than 10 years old, archiving stuff that hasn't been touched at 10 years? So the beauty of it, and I talk with a lot of records management teams, is to get IT organizations to really respond to this and to get budget and to get their support on it. There's a lot of win-win for them. So if they can recoup some of their time and some of their capacity and their investment, it'll pay for itself purely on the IT side, not to mention on the risk and liability side. What percentage of data is duplicate? We have customers that have 100 terabyte file servers, network shares. They go in there and do the data profile and find out 30 to 40% of it is redundant or duplicate data. So there's a bunch of queries and filters too. You can do some similar stuff. Performing a PII audit. So we have a customer that had a policy that users could not create PSTs. They had legal situations in the past where PSTs caused challenges for their legal team. So they put in a policy that says no users are allowed to create or store PSTs on the network. Thought they were good. We went in there and did a PI audit and found about 18,000 PSTs across their network. So obviously their policy was created but not implemented properly. So where are the PSTs? A good example of that. What data is stored on these servers, backup tapes, which backup tapes contain email. So all across the board, all sorts of different inquiries into the content. So here's some example of what we like to call dynamic reports. So the thing is with the reporting is it's not all static and canned, and you'll see in the demonstration how that works. But you can create filters and queries, combine those with reports to take action on the data right through the interface. So for example, looking for age data, you can filter on specific user shares. So you can point to specific servers and say, I'm just interested in these locations. And then filter it down to last access in 5 years. And you can move it to any kind of environment. So maybe you want to move it offline, out to a cloud storage, out to a less expensive platform. All sorts of choices here. Ex-employee data, another option here. You can filter and query by owner names. You can say, owned by this set of people, could be hundreds of different people, last access more than 7 years ago, and delete that stuff. So get a blessing from the legal team to defensively delete that data. Departmental data, so you can filter down to, say, for example, the HR server. You can query on project keywords, for example, and archive that intellectual property, anything related to that project. Search by multimedia files, find the owner and capacity. So give me the top 100 people that are storing a lot of multimedia, audiovisual type files out there on the network. And then I want to notify their management that that stuff needs to be cleaned up. PIO audits, Social Security numbers and credit card numbers. We see lots of companies and organizations sharing sensitive Social Security numbers and credit card numbers all the time. People really need to respect that and understand that it's not a good thing to do. Find that stuff. Manage PSTs. All sorts of different ways you can use filters. Filters combined with reports to take action on the content. So here's a sample workflow. You'll see this live in a minute where we're looking for age data. So you can filter on specific locations. So here you have full flexibility to select a number of network locations out there on your network. And this location here will mimic your network location. And then do a summary report. This is last modified report. So I could do last access just as well. And you can get a report on last modified age. So here you can see the biggest piece of the pie here is greater than 5 years. So 42% of that data has not been modified, or if it was accessed in more than 5 years. You know, that's representing here about, you know, a small number of gigabytes. That could be terabytes. So it could be 50 terabytes, 100 terabytes, whatever. So you can know exactly. But here in 2 seconds, you can say, you know what, most of that data in those environments hasn't been accessed in 5 years. And then what you can do, since they're dynamic reports, you can uncheck all the options and filter it down to just, see all the options. Here, you can say, I just want to check greater than 5 years. So you see it filters it down to only that data that hasn't been modified in more than 5 years. And then once it's filtered, run another summary report by owners and find that, hey, you know what? Here's the biggest culprit. It's this guy. He's got 62% of that stuff. And by the way, this guy hasn't worked here for 7 years. So obviously he hasn't modified his own stuff because he hasn't worked here for 7 years. So no one's touched it. So if you use the access thing and say, not access 7 years, owned by an ex-employee, what are we going to do with that stuff? Let's make a decision about that content. If it hasn't been accessed in 7 years and you pull it off the network, no one's going to miss it. So disposition options. So within the interface, and here's the interface you'll see on the top portion of the screen here, you can individually select or select full groups of files, and there's a delete button. You could archive it. There's an archive capability within this platform. You can move it, get it off the current environment, move it someplace else. We also provide output. You see that at the bottom is CSV listing. Some customers want to get the full path of where these files are in the file name and use third-party tools or their own tools to move it, encrypt it, archive it. Encrypting is a popular one. If you've got any kind of regulatory requirements to encrypt it, you can use tools to do that. So typical sample workflows here we'll come back to. What I want to do is pass it over to Greg and let him take you through a demonstration of the technology, and we'll come back and answer some questions.
Thanks, Jim. So what I'm going to do is log into one of our demo PCs, our Index Engines lab. As you see, Index Engines has a browser-based GUI interface. I'm going to log in here. When you log into the product, you're brought to the additional statistics page showing you the overall status of the engine. I'm going to go right to the search interface at this point. I'm going to take you to a data set that has been mounted. The file share has been mounted, has been indexed, and I'm going to start off on the preference screen here, running through some of the common workflow scenarios that I work with clients on a weekly basis around data profiling, like Jim has discussed with you. So the first thing I'm going to do down here is I'm going to go look at a data set here on the file level. This is that metadata view that Jim discussed. I'm going to go over to our Reports tab. I'm going to go over to Filters and select a sample data set that I have. It's just a subset of data that should be a good display for the demo today. So I'm going to go and run a blank search. What that's going to do is going to run a search on all of the data set that I just selected to give you that whole profile view. So when you run a blank search in Index Engines, it's going to give you a view of all of the data that you have housed in the index segment that you created. And as you see on the right side of the screen here, the report side, first report we came to is file types. And from this drop down, there's different types of reports we can go to. So out of all of the data in this subset of data that I have selected, you can see here PDF files are the largest, followed by Word, and so on and so on. You have a nice little visual interactive graph here. On the bottom here, gives you a ranking excuse me, by the types of files. On the top of the page here, you could select the drop-down. These are all of our standard reports. And what I'm going to show you is all of these standard reports can be combined with any of this file, document, email level metadata. I'll go through each of those with you, as well as content. So if you're going to, if you have a full content index built as opposed to a metadata, you can even search keywords or for PII information. And these are used in conjunction with our summary reports. Like I said, right now you're looking at a file type report. You're looking at the unique records. So this is a deduplicated set. There are a few different deduplication options in index engines, and I have one of them selected right now. You can also go to the file extension report. It's going to show you a different report on file extensions. Go down here to host to find out where this data resides in your environment. On our test environment here, the data set that I have selected is from a few different servers, as you see. I'll go down to another report here, owners. It's going to give you an owner report, so who owns the data that I'm looking at. Again, it ranks it by file count, data size. And go to another report, size of the data. It's going to give you a breakdown of size. I can click on this to sort that. So I can see that there are two very large files out here. I may want to look into them further, and I can go down a workflow with that on how you would do that. So first workflow, I'll go through large files in my environment. What are they? Who owns it? Where are they located? So like I said, the summary reports you're looking at here are interactive. So right from this report, I can deselect all these options, select this large file category, go to the search option, update my search screen. And now I am solely looking at the data on these two large files. Who owns this data? I want to see who the owners are of these large files. See here, Bill Clinton. So I have one custodian that owns both of these files. I can go see what file types they are. Go here, there are two large PST containers. So now I know from just looking at my size report that the two largest files I have in my enterprise are actually PST files, and they're owned by Bill Clinton. So now I want to go and see the age report. So I look at the modified times. I can see that these are 1 to 2 years old, so maybe that doesn't meet my policy to move it to cheaper storage or delete the file. Maybe I just want to watch these files, monitor the data in place, maybe go to the user, see why those large files are where they are, and just review the policy on that. So that's one workflow, using interactive reports, identifying large files, finding information out about those files, such as who the owner is, the age of the files, what type of data there is. From the summary reports, I can even navigate over now to our results pane. So instead of looking at the data at a high level, I can look at it a little more granular level here. By going to the results pane, I can actually select one of those two files that I just narrowed down with you in our reports page. And by selecting this, and I'm on the metadata level view, so I'm going to be able to see all the metadata attributes for this PST container. I can see the path of where that PST container resides. It resides on a 101 server in a collection of PST folder under an Outlook 2003 cache of files. I can see the file size is 8 gigs. Going down folder here, I can see the owner. I can see the time created, modified, accessed. Just going down here, I can see the full path of where that is. So from this page here, I can see that granular metadata view of these actual files, looking at the file level. There's a few things I could do from here now. So I can go and select these two files. Maybe I want to create a report. So I'm going to create a CSV report that I could give maybe to this department that owns this data and say, hey, you guys have PST files. I know you have a policy against housing PST files. This report shows you the file path, file name, and all the other metadata attributes about those files and where they reside, who owns it, what the dates are that they were last modified, last accessed, and whatnot. Another option, I can go through and try to defensively delete these documents. So let's say they are outside of policy. I can go click on the delete button here, and that'll give me options to delete from the source or delete from the index engine segment. So those are options for defensible deletion. Index engines has a full audit trail of what decisions and what actions were taken within the product, so you have full accountability for your actions that you take through the product, and it's all defensible. So I'm going to go clear this out, and again, select a sample data set to run, and I'm going to go through another scenario or two with you that I commonly see from clients. So I'm going to go again and search this sample data set. This time I want to find any audio-video files. So I'm going to go on our file property filter here. As you see, there's different file metadata properties we could search by, such as the file name, the owner, size range here, created, modified, access. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and we have different categorizations here that help the user define their search. So I want to look for audio and video files and see if there are any in this data set that I just selected. So I'm selecting these two categories as a whole. You could also drill down and just select a specific file extension type. But I want to look for all audio and video files. So I've selected these categories as a whole. And I'm going to go and run my search. So I'm going to run my search on this sample data set. I'm going to look for all audio and video files. I can see here I'm on a modified time report, so it's giving me the age report of the audio video files I found. On the top right here, you'll see I found 58 files. I can go see what types of extensions are those files and the breakdown of those. There's a few MP3s in here. There's a few WAV files. I can see where that data resides in my environment. I'm going to go to the host report. Looks like I have two hosts here, or a majority of the data resides on this one Quest server. And go see who the owner of that data is. So I can see here I have two custodians in the environment that own all the audio-video files. And same thing, I can go over to the Results tab and look at these files in a more granular level, look at the file names, the file paths, and that information may help me determine if these audio-video files have business value, or are they someone's personal iTunes collection. Another sample I'm going to go through here. Again, I'm going to clear out my search. I'm going to go limit it to my data set of demo here that I have for your demo today. I'll select that data set. This time I'm going to run a blank search again, get all my files, and I want to look for a particular file type. So I'm going to go over to my Summary Reports tab, and I want to look at file extensions to see if I see any files that should not be housed per our policy for this example. So let's say the policy is no PST files. Again, I can deselect using our interactive feature here. I could select just PST, update my report, and now I can get all information about these 62 PST files, such as where they're housed, what host they reside on, what the age looks like of these. So I can see here that 23 of them have not been modified in over 5 years. Maybe I want to look into that further if that stands out, that like they might be abandoned containers of mail out in my environment. So now I'm going to update my search here. So find who owns those older files. And then I could then download a summary report to find the file path, file location, just like I showed in the prior example for you. So the last scenario I'm going to work through here is I'm going to clear my search out, go back to preferences, and instead of searching the metadata index only, I want to go to the full content. So I'm going to switch over to my full content mode. Okay, I'm going to go over to reports again. And this time I'm going to build a PII query. So I'm going to go over to our query builder here. I have a saved query to search for PII data. I'm going to select that query. I'm going to load it. And for this sample, I have our standard PII query here. It's using our algorithm to look for Social Security and some credit card and other number patterns. And I also put some key terms in there. So I'm going to do that in conjunction with searching that subset of data that I've been using with you today on this demo. And I'm going to go and search that. I'm going to see if I have any PII results here. So I found one file. Again, I could look at a high level here. Let me see what type of file that is. It's a Word document. I can see where that file resides in the host. It's on this 250 server. Then if I go to the Results tab, when you're in full content mode, in addition to looking at all of the metadata properties of the file, you also have a text reconstruction. So underneath all the metadata attributes for this file, I could scroll down here, and as you see, whenever I run key term searching or PII data, when in full text mode, full content mode, it's going to highlight the responsive results. So here it's highlighting Social Security pattern numbers because I ran our PII pattern search, so it's highlighting that. It's also highlighting the word social here because that's one of my key terms in my query. So it also highlights your key terms for you as well. So then, that same scenario, I can go through, I can create that CSV file that's going to contain, after I select the file, create a CSV file that's going to create that, that all the metadata attributes for this file that I could provide to someone within the IT department maybe to go and move, let's say, this file that contains PII information to its appropriate place in the environment. It gives you the file path, file name, and again, all those metadata attributes. Another option is defensible deletion. Well, I want to go and delete this file. It shouldn't be on that 250 server. It contains PII information. So I could, after the file is selected, I click the delete button here. Again, those are the options. I could delete it from the index engine segment, or I could go and delete it from the storage. There's also verification options here. So this comes in use with the index engine indexing, like Jim explained. We can index at the metadata level or at the full content level. One of the powerful tools we have is the ability to schedule indexing. So I could schedule incremental updates to the index to go out and scan my enterprise to find any new data or data that has been modified since the last time I ran my index. And I could schedule that on a scheduled basis, let's say to run every night. What this feature does is it'll verify that the modification time in the index engine segment has not been changed. So I'm not defensively deleting data that was 5 years old last week, but has since been used by a user in my environment. So that's just a safety check there that we built in. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Jim again to go back to the slides.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Appreciate the demonstration. So I think some of the, what Greg showed you is how the product works, and the key point is the flexibility. You can really customize it and use it any way you want to look at the system, look at your data environment with new eyes and with more intelligent eyes. And a lot of the sample workflows that we see out there are, age data cleanup. And if you do clean up age data and you end up cleaning, that IBM organization or CGOC saying up to 70% could be aged out of any business value, that's a high number. If you say 40% is aged out, if you clean up a large portion of it like that, it makes your life a lot easier. Data tiering, managing large files like multimedia files, who owns them, why do they have them, do they need to have them? PII audits, email management. Chargebacks is an interesting one. So if you're looking for ways to stimulate departments to work and to clean up stuff, you can work with IT organizations to go to your HR or finance or legal and say, you know what, you're taking up 30% of the capacity on the server, and this is how you're being charged for that, IT chargebacks. And by the way, of that 30%, 60% hasn't been accessed in 5 years. Can we help you, work with you to clean that stuff up? So I think those are kind of interesting scenarios to kind of motivate and stimulate people to get stuff done. One of the questions that came in, I think it's good timing here as far as deleting and cleaning stuff up, is as you delete stuff, is there any record of that? And I think one of the important features that we have in the system is an activity log or a deletion log. So if you log in, say you're John Doe, and you log into the Index Engines platform to delete it, and you delete 100 files, those 100 files will be listed in the log as deleted by John Doe on today's date, May 23rd at 2:30, for example. So all that stuff is logged for historical purposes as well, and these reports are also logged as well. So a lot of customers that are doing defensible deletion projects, and logging that is really critical to that process. Okay. So here's that CGOC organization. This is the chart that they're promoting, saying that if you look at data, really stuff that's required for legal hold is about 1% of what exists out there. What's required for records retention is really about 5% of what exists out there. So really 6% really should be archived for your archiving strategy. We have customers that are archiving 100% of their data, which is really just kind of a storage strategy of replication of data. But whereas they're saying 6% really is what needs to be preserved and saved. Stuff that has business value that they recite as 25%, stuff that could be defensively purged or deleted, 69%. So you can see the bulk of it, there's a lot of cleanup that has to happen. So data profiling, to wrap things up, and I know we're getting at our time limit here, is really to provide you the insight into your corporate data assets so you can make better decisions about the content. And these decisions could be deletion, could be migration, could be encryption, could be archiving. It's really a lot of the flexibility is there that you can really take any kind of actions that's required really to improve your legal and compliance support and manage long-term risk and liability. So we have a couple questions here, and a lot of times you talk to people about, well, if I clean up storage, storage is cheap. Storage isn't cheap. What's the return on investment? What are you paying for that storage? What are you paying to back up and manage that for disaster recovery purposes? What are you paying for legal compliance requests to sort through all that stuff to find data? How do you manage sensitive content? What's your archiving strategies? How do you protect against data breaches and policies? What about a merger and acquisition? When you acquire or you merge with a company, you have to migrate, move all that data and copy it and integrate it in your data center. How's that done, especially since most of that is useless content. So I mentioned we talked about pricing, getting started. We work with a lot of customers on small proof of concepts. Start small, and I think the key is just start. So if you start small, start with a server that has a bunch of mystery data. I have no idea what's on that server. User shares, network shares. You have a lot of intellectual property lawsuits. Maybe you need to be working with the legal department servers and so on. $1,000 a terabyte is a list price for metadata index. In this case, plus the hardware. I mentioned we're having a VMware or virtual version, which eliminates that hardware cost. So we have a starter package. It's going to be that starts around just under $10,000 for 5 terabytes of data. Large volume of data, you can get started pretty quick. We can do these proof of concepts pretty easily for organizations just to get a feel for how this works. We also have a cloud lab, so you can't really send us your servers, but you can send recent backup tapes. If you have a recent full backup or backup of some of these servers you're interested in, for $150 a tape, we can generate a profile report for you and show you how the system works. We've got some white papers here. If you want some of the latest white papers and information on data profiling, I also have a good white paper that shows sample reports that are generated. I can also send you a copy of the slide deck. My email address is on there. Just shoot me an email, and I'll get it out to you this afternoon. I know we're at our time limit, so we'll cut off the questions. If we didn't get back to you on your questions, we'll answer you one-on-one. But I hope you found this informative, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thanks for your time today.